especially with my two fabulous guests today. I've got Harvey Tuck, and as a new addition to the LinkedIn Live Hour of Empower family, we've got Tabitha Barron, who's a good friend of Catherine Chadwick. Put a little plug in for Catherine, great lady. With that said, our word of the day is advocate because Tarvi, myself, and Tabitha are advocates for different causes and different initiatives. So it's great to represent other people in a positive way. Chat's open. We depend on chat to direct our thoughts and conversations to give you as many quality takeaways as possible. With that said, before chat really starts livening up, I'll turn it over to Harvey. Harvey, how are things going, and what's your initial thoughts on Advocate?
Yeah, hi Don, and hi Tabitha. Nice to meet you as well. Yes, things are going well. I've just been on a little holiday, so I've been away for a bit, but it's lovely to be back. And what a word to come back to as well, because it's something that really resonates with me. Most people know that on a Sunday, I like to support people that are looking for a new job. And I'm an advocate for all of those people, and they're an advocate for me as well. You know, I get support from them. I think this platform is absolutely the place for advocacy. You know, there's so many opportunities to support one another, collaborate with one another, find out, you know, what people are doing, what they're interested in, and, you know, and how you can best work together with people. So yeah, I really live advocacy and being an advocate, because I think supporting one another is so important, and it's the way you're supported yourself. Yeah, so there's Matt, and I'm Matt. We were just talking about you, Matt.
Yeah, very well too.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's a great word, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say about it.
Well, great. Well, I'll turn it over to Tabitha. In the meantime, everybody in the audience, love to hear what your definition or understanding of advocate or advocacy is. With that, Tabitha, so happy and honored to have you today. Say hello to our wonderful audience.
Yes, hello. So I was excited about coming here with you. The fact that we're talking about advocacy, and I think the internet is off a little bit. So I'm going to try to fix that on my side. But advocacy for me, 100% has everything to do with being able to stand up, support, and communicate for those who may not be able to do it for themselves. So sometimes we think that advocacy, it's just somebody starting trouble or somebody just being in business. It may not be their own. But in all actuality, I believe that it is our responsibility to be true advocates for those who cannot do it for themselves. And for me, that just so happens to be children and the aging population, right? So people don't realize it, but there are two groups of the people that I work to support. And that's because those are the two most ignored people on this planet, which are the young and the aging. And they need as much advocacy around what they do as they possibly can get.
Well put. And with that, want to recognize some of our wonderful audience. Christine's here. Christine wants to connect with Harvey on a Zoom or LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Christine's just a wonderful lady, juggling all kinds of different balls in the air. Matt's here. Matt's just a wonderful gentleman who represents UK in a fine way. And looking forward to getting with Matt and getting to know him a little bit better. Petra's here, and Petra is part of Ashley's Angels, which is a foundation that she created for her child. Got a LinkedIn user that's giving us a thumbs up. And basically, Petra says, I'm an advocate for abused and homeless children and protect the rights of senior citizens. So there's real commonality there. Petra says, good, Harvey. And Petra's been on fire the last few weeks, being prodigious in her sharing. So, Harvey, we've got a lot of people involved in the same thing today. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say hello to everybody that's commenting here as well. And Christine, I'd love to connect on a Zoom. So yeah, let's send some details across. That would be great. But yeah, it's really nice. It's really good that we've got some people that are aligned with Tabitha and what she's an advocate for. And it's such an important issue to look after people in the community that are vulnerable and that need advocacy and need our support and help. And children and older people are absolutely within that category, and we should always help where we can. And I think that this is a platform where that can be put into action. We can all do our best. I've got an elderly neighbor who's 94 years old, I think she is. And, I just helped her move her bins. And, we can all help in a little way when we see the opportunity. But it's a great platform to sort of put advocacy in order and create a place where people can go for help. Rather than perhaps relying on something that's more random and is reliant on acts of kindness, which I always love, though. I love seeing a random act of kindness, and yes. I think that's shared pretty well on the platform. When those happen, I often say to people who are getting fed up with reading the news and seeing things that perhaps aren't as positive, for every negative thing you see, there's millions of little positive acts of kindness that happen, because human beings are lovely in general, and most people want to help one another. That's definitely what I've found to be true. And actually, I think if you're brave enough to reach out for help, to try and reach for an advocate, or to be an advocate, then most people will accept that. If you reach out, there'll be quite a few hands reaching back, and yeah, I think it's really, really important, and it's really, really interesting to get people's take on what they support and how they support people. We've all got different ways of supporting people, and I'm really looking forward to hearing.
Yeah.
That's so good. So Tabitha, what's your thoughts now?
Okay, so I'm gonna slightly differ here. So some of it is that, so it is important to reach out for help when you can, but I'm gonna say the reason why I chose the two groups was because the statistics actually show that those are the two groups of people who are 100% ignored as much and as often as possible. We cannot expect them as the, for a lack of a better word, victim, to be responsible for their advocacy, the need, or the call for help for that. When you notice that something is happening, it is our responsibility to do something about it. That's what advocacy is. But asking a child to advocate for themselves in a group of people who their ego shows up first before the human shows up is kind of an unfair thing to ask of a child. But then when you come to the aging population, and for me, I just call them the silver team. You guys are lovely individuals in the history of our lives, right? I just call you guys the silver team. The silver team, they've lived a life. They have had those experiences. They have done the work to get to where they are. They're winning the race, right? Because we are sitting at 20, 30, 40, 50 years of age, and they're sitting at 60, 70, and 80 years of age. So they're winning the race, right? They're already there, because there's a lot of other people that didn't make it that far. But at the same time, they have done their work. And it's just now for them to say, I have all of this information. I have all of this stuff for you. And for us to say, I don't care about you. I don't care about your history. I don't care about what you have to say. And then you're asking them to push and say, I need an advocate, I need help. No, they paid for that already. They've paved that way to where they are. It's our responsibility to say, let's help and give back, and let's gather information from you before it is lost. So the advocacy on both sides, it shouldn't be their responsibility. We should acknowledge that is our future and our history, and it's our responsibility to advocate for those two things to stay a part of our everyday living.
Okay, sounds good. I thought, Tabitha, if you sign off and sign back on, that could solve the delay.
Right.
Your picture and your voice are coming out clear as a bell.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I'll leave now.
yeah, we'll wait to see again. Yeah, but I think this conversation is really getting pretty interesting because there is so much emotion to it because of the individuals in need. You know, this isn't just people taking advantage of opportunities like we're trying to do as a group here. It's about people who can have that access or don't have that access, and for whatever reason can't do it for themselves anymore. And how much awareness is there? And I think that's the thing. A lot of people are just totally unaware or want to be unaware because it's too troubling or too overwhelming. How can I handle all of the homelessness? How can I handle all of the poverty or whatever it is? And it is too big as a problem, but one person helping another can solve that, right? Because it's an army you're looking to build, not an organization. You know, you want the foot soldiers to be there mending, supporting, helping. But, you know, we're also starting to focus more on the needy, and naturally, because, you know, the word is advocate and we have advocates here, but it's really about helping ourselves in whatever we're doing, wherever we're at. Everybody is in need of more help. And it could be the biggest sports stars on the planet. They need help to maintain, to continue to build. Where do they get their advocate for? So an advocate doesn't always have to be taking less and making it equal or more. It could be taking anything and building on it. And I think that's the constructive part of it. Petra says, I sometimes drive around San Antonio downtown, see if there are children are lost or sleep in a dark corner of a hotel. You know, it's those little things, and they're not little to the person who you approach, right? Because they're not comfortable. They're not safe. Renadub's here. Danny from England, another great guy. I'm here to support the community. Just a wonderful fountain of knowledge and insight. Jose's here. You're a remarkable people. Thank you for what you do. Dean, haven't seen you a bit, but always glad to see you. Last time you were here, you were in New Orleans. Didn't hear how you got from there, how you got from Texas to there and back, maybe. Petra comes back with, oh, yes, you're right. But if they are too terrified to say or do something about this child being abused, you know, there's all you can do is all you can do when you can do it. And everything goes towards something. Maria's saying hi. Petra's back with, no, I don't agree with being a true advocate must have the responsibility to help the ones you can help themselves. For sure. You know, the question, here we hope. Hi, Tabitha.
Hi. Nope, it's still off.
Yeah, a little.
Okay, so this time I'm gonna restart my PC. Sorry.
Okay, not a problem. Do what you got to do. We're here. We're not going anywhere. So Harvey, it seems like we really touched a sensitive element.
Yeah, and I wanted to come back on that actually, because I do agree. You know, I did say there about people reaching out and hands reaching back, but I completely agree that not everyone's in that position. I really do. I agree with what Petra's saying there. So there are plenty of people out there that don't have the strength or just don't know how to reach out. And absolutely, as advocates, we need to make it as easy as possible for people who can't reach out or don't want to reach out to be helped. And I think what you said there, Don, actually, it's about lots of people doing lots of little things. Because if lots of people do lots of little things to help, then a lot is achieved by that. It doesn't have to necessarily be one person doing a lot. It can be lots of people doing a little. And then we create a community maybe of advocacy. And I think encouraging more and more people to be advocates and to support vulnerable communities in any way that they can. And this is the wonderful thing about our community here, and all of the different takes on how to support and become a better advocate. You know, what a great thing. You know, I love to hear better ways to become a better advocate for people. Because if we all share our experiences and improve our advocacy, then we create a community of advocates, all sharing experiences and creating good when we all come together to do that. And, you know, I think, what's it? Danny said, I'm here to support the community. Oh, what's Matt said? As a leader, I've always felt it important to be an advocate of individuals within my team. I want them to succeed. Yeah, I completely agree with that, Matt, actually. You know, as a business owner or somebody in business or somebody who's looking after other team members, you know, look for those talents and nurture those individuals. Because everyone's an individual, you know, when you have a company, you know, and when I've been in those positions, you know, you can find people with really, really unique passions and skills that you wouldn't necessarily have perhaps hired them for. But if you nurture and look after those people, you may need to reorganize the jigsaw pieces a little, but you'll get a prettier picture. You know, if you nurture talent. Same as at school, you know, I think that's exactly how education should work, about being an advocate of individuals, you know, and really understanding children and, you know, and what their needs are, and really listen. Because, you know, that's where you find out what's going on and how you can best help. But yeah, I really agree with that, Matt.
Well, I think Harvey just distinguishes himself by being able to take whatever's being said and put it in a package that makes even more sense, you know, combined. And, you know, advocacy, I agree, is a lot of people doing a little to help a lot. And like Habitat for Humanity is a great organization, right? They build one house at a time for a needy family. But they do it with all these volunteers that could come in for an hour, could come in for a day, maybe help refreshments if they can't do construction, maybe do something they love doing like painting and decorating. But what you do is you now harness the ideals, interests, aspirations of people in constructive activity, that the end result comes out with a finished home that everybody put a couple hours into. But when you get 100 people doing a job, and the key to it, just like this show, is organization, is access. How do you get in? How do you get to work? How do you go home? You know, versus people hanging out. And that's what I've learned over a year of these shows is purpose, intent. What is the result you want to get? And this show actually, and just like a lot of other shows, you know, Kelly's show, you know, the Awesome Journey, and Gretchen's show, you know, the flight attendant, are advocates for advocates, right? And some people are advocates for, let's say, business ownership. Some people are advocates for health, for education, right? And by being aware that, hey, there is a cause for that, there is something I can do. And I think that's what awareness is so important, because once people say, wow, they got an organization that does this, and all I need to do is put a half a Saturday in once in a while, and I can. Hi there, Tabitha. How are we doing?
I'm back. I got it.
Okay. Okay, great. It's good to have you back. Thanks for never giving up. We were just talking about advocacy and how it is important to so many people, but it's also about making people aware, organizing people towards a purpose, like Habitat for Humanity has done a great job of getting their name out there and building houses for people one at a time, leveraging a lot of people. And it's used, being at the front end of social media, being an influencer, and being the ability to organize and support. So we've got Petra's just on fire today. Her organization is Ashley's Angels, as an advocacy for abused children, see that has trusted contacts that will jump into action when necessary. And it's very huge from what Petra was saying. Danny says, I'm going to say Fergan, the ultimate pleasure from advocacy. That must be something that Harvey knows.
I remember Fergan is the pride in somebody else's accomplishment. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think being an advocate, that's a big part of being an advocate. Definitely, when you're excited for other people's achievements, I think that's part of being an advocate. Definitely, that's part of supporting someone, to be excited when they achieve something, and to, being an advocate is to publicly support a cause or somebody. And I think that public part of it, I think you sing someone's praises when they've achieved something, and that's part of being a support to them as well. I wanted to touch on something that Petra said that I thought was really valid. She said to jump into action when necessary. It was the last part of something that she said, and I think that's a really relevant thing, because we can we can talk about what we might try and do to help people and how we might try and support people, but it's actually to step up to do that thing of that moment. Sometimes, if you're, I don't know, if you're on a underground or a subway and you see somebody who's being verbally attacked, I'd like to think I'd be the first person to step up and say, look, that's not the thing to do, and to protect that person. Nobody likes bullies, and I think actioning something is really important. I've spoken about it before, but there's been times where I've overheard conversations about people who have lost their jobs. I've been on trains or in various different places, and I've stepped up to say, hey, look, this is my name, this is what I try and do on LinkedIn, reach out if you need any help. And they're little things sometimes. Going back to what Petra supports and what you do as well, Tabitha, if it's someone very young or very old or very vulnerable that's clearly being abused, or that something's happening that's not right, then you need to step up, and you don't need to plan it or think about it. You just need to do.
Yep.
So yeah, I think some really, really good points.
And I really like what Petra is doing. I would like to connect with her for sure. I think that's, I don't know what's going on. My speeds are really good, but I have not a clue what's going on with the delay. But
we can hear you perfectly.
You're doing good.
Okay, cool. So my thing is that at the end of the day, we step in where we know something is not right. So when we sit and don't do anything, and we witness the wrong, then we're kind of part of the problem at that point. So we do have to, in order to encourage change, we almost have to be the one that starts the change. And that doesn't happen unless you recognize that there's extra support that's needed. And I love the fact that you're able to do that, because I do it also. People send me messages, I'm looking for a job, or I'm having this challenge with my kids or whatever. If I know somebody, if I see it, I try really hard not to go by it, and just to say, is there something or someone in my network that can help and support them in whatever task that they have in front of them? because that's how we start to bring us back to the humane side of everything and understanding that we're all in this together. If you're having that problem today, the opportunity for me to have that problem in a few days or next week or next year is also possible. So what would I want for me if I was in that situation? What would I want for my mom if she was in that situation? And then just act accordingly. And I think that I feel like when we start doing things like that, things really start to take form the way we want to see and experience life.
So true. And I think until you've been there or relate to someone close to you who's been there, do you fully understand what people are going through? Because most people will turn a blind eye because they don't want to see. And they know what they would see if they looked. So that they just like to erase it, feel like it just isn't there. And that's where people get marginalized. That's where people end up in the shadows because they're not included. They don't have access. Everybody has issues. Everybody has challenges. So no one is free. Some people just can't help themselves. Some people can get knocked down and know how to get up, and sometimes get up better for being knocked down because maybe they shouldn't have been where they were that wasn't in a balanced situation. And I think it's just being proactive, whether it's advocacy, anything that's important to you needs to be acted on, or it can't be that important. It might be important in thought, but how does that translate? And at the end of the day, it's only what you do that matters. No one ever hears what you thought. No one really cares about your intentions. Everybody is in the good intentions. And yeah, if this was to happen, I do this. But when it does happen, do they really do that? And then there's a level of integrity. How much integrity does the advocate have, in the process? And the key is really what was the result of what you did? I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. And, when you can measure it, you can feel some level of accomplishment, right? If you just throw a dart at a blank wall and hope for the best, it's hard to duplicate that anyways. So Beverly's here. Beverly's just the best. She's here every Tuesday. She says, yes, Harvey, agree with you. Step up and take action. Maria comes back with a great topic. These days, it's not often that people step up. That's a pity. Linda, who's just a wonderful, wise individual. Morning all have been on new schedule, helping friend. My heart has always been an advocate for others. So true. Nicole's here. Here's a new person. Love the point that if you see it and don't say something, you are part of the problem. I agree with that 100%. And if it's guilt that drives you to quality action, then, acknowledge it then and take advantage of it, because it's not just, the givers or the takers. It's the whole relationship of it. It's the connection. It's knowing we're all people. And, that whole saying, if, where anybody is, that's where I could be very easily. Right?
Yes. So I went and looked up this quote. I wanted to make sure I got it right. So Maya Angelou says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So advocacy falls right into that. Sometimes we don't, people are not made up. They don't always remember your name, but they remember that you held the elevator for them, because now they feel seen. Right? People remember that you helped them to their car with groceries. They won't remember who you were, and you're not even looking for a thank you. But at the end of the day, it's because, wow, somebody actually noticed that I was struggling and was willing to support. For me, I remember this one incident where I was in a grocery store, and I have a child that's on the spectrum. And I have gone through this whole entire ordeal, because that's where some of the advocacy started. But went through this whole ordeal, and I remember meeting a woman in the parking lot, and she had just gotten her diagnosis for her son. And she didn't have her spouse around. And this is 100% a stranger, 100% a stranger. And she's just fit to be tied. She doesn't know what to do, what direction to go, and anything like that. And I stayed in the parking lot with her, spent the time with her to help her understand your diagnosis that you just received is not your end all. That's not where everything stops. It's just where everything begins. You have a different starting point. And I was able to provide her encouragement and motivation and in a path forward that she wasn't going to get when going to the grocery store or hanging out in the parking lot, right? That was 100% a total stranger. We became friends a little bit later. Over time, we just kind of built on that. And she's in our lives today, right? We support her and her family and things like that. But if it wasn't for the fact that I took the time to see somebody and notice that, hey, they are where I used to be, and I did not like that feeling of being alone. So let me help them and provide them with something that I wish that I would have had when I was in that situation.
Well, that's so heartfelt. And it's a story like that really makes people feel, and hopefully through their new feeling, change. And a lot of people aren't aware of the gratification of helping somebody. I know in my past, there were times I couldn't have done it without somebody next to me helping me, where the load was too great, or the mystery was too vast for me to understand. And when you realize that one word, that one person could change your attitude and your direction, redirect you. And I think the key to it is the hope that one can receive. That whole thing, give a guy a fish, teach him to fish. It's the same thing as you want something that's going to be sustainable, something that's going to duplicate through others. And to your point, everybody's challenge is now everybody's achievement from that. Because if, the saying, if you can do it, I can do it. Right? Or the saying, if I did it, I'm sure you can do it, because you're starting with me now. I didn't start with anybody. I started by myself, had to figure it out and do it. If someone would have came to me like I'm coming to you, could have been a little bit of a shortcut. And I think the key word is loneliness. Anytime you're alone, you're too much with yourself, and your problem just continues to loop and just beat you down. Right? Once you can open it up and say, hey, I'm only worth 60%. I need the other 40 to get me home here. Is there anybody that can provide it? And most of it is emotional support. Most of it is, here's a phone number. If you get really messed up, give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you. Right? If you show that it's a benefit to you and not just some gratuitous favor that you share and don't back up, because that would probably be the worst thing you can do, is build expectation and a belief it's there, and you call and say, hey, I'm busy, I don't even know you. So, I believe everybody in themselves wants to do better. There are people who don't know how to do better. There's people that don't have commitment or too lazy to carry it out, or tomorrow's a better day always than the day you're in. But that's, you're also talking about hundreds of millions of people. Just on LinkedIn, there's 970 million people. If 1%, which is 9 million people, did something a little extra for everybody, that's a huge impact. And it could be one good comment. 9 million people comment on something. There's 970 million people registered. If 1% knew about a show like this or shows like this, we'd have 10 million people at least watching it.
Right.
And the difference is not that it isn't there. Most people aren't aware, and most people are so focused on supporting themselves and not getting very far because they're one person doing one thing at a time, versus joining forces in a larger group that collectively can do so much more incrementally. And then not only that, with knowledge share, there's learning. If everybody learns faster by everybody else's exercises, then we all ratchet up together and we have access and we have direction. So I think those are really key. Petra says, as you all know by now, that I have a habit of having a loud voice that echoes, so I'll jump in when someone is being abused or in trouble. And, you know, Petra is a firm believer, and she's got experiences that drove her to this. You know, one of her child was murdered, you know, and that's how she took up this cause. And, you know, I respect her for all of that, and how she's able to take that and provide service to others and find purpose. And I think that can fill your heart, knowing if I couldn't have done it for my own, maybe I could do it for someone else. And there's not enough people like Tabitha who are focused on schools, because all you hear is the results of what happens when nothing happens.
Yes.
So would you like to address that, Tabitha?
Yes, because we just got to finish having this conversation about this specifically. At the end of the day, status quo is why we continue to have the same problem repeated over and over and over again. And the fact that we are told, regardless of where we are in that timeline, that whether we are part of it or that we don't have a kid in the school, so we don't have the right to speak on it, or what rights do you have to have these conversations? These are our children. And when parents struggle, I mean, you got a kinder and you struggle, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to send this kid to school. They're going to go to school and they're going to learn, but I'm nervous and excited at the same time, only to have a situation happen that now you don't have a kid. You don't bring home a kid. You know, that bus crash, I think it killed a lot of kids yesterday, first day of school. You know, school shootings. These things do not have to continue. They just don't. But our egos show up, and then we forget that the people that we are serving, those little people we're serving, those are our clients, our target, our future, our responsibility collectively. And it's just time for us to do something so much different, because the education outcome, the outcome of our children, if we were to measure education, when you have greater than 40% not reading on grade level, do you have some schools that have all this money and other schools who don't? You have teachers that are leaving in droves and who want to get out of this. And then you have people who just don't believe in the education system. That's a failure on us. That's a failure because we decided to put people in place and not hold them accountable and not force the issue and demand the change that needs to happen. Our kids do not sign up to go to school to have all this anxiety because we're not protecting them. It is our responsibility to educate them, to work on their health and well-being. That includes their mental health, their physical health, and everything that encompasses who they are. And that is one reason why I know that I was created to be an instigator, right? I was created to be that voice that was not willing to just be silenced. That fire I have in my belly for children and the Silver Team, I have to say, is because there's so often we just continue to ignore them. And I don't understand why. These kids are going to be who takes care of us when we have to move into assisted living or in nursing homes, or those are the ones who are going to pull our teeth, who are going to wipe our behind when we can't do it. These are the ones who are going to dictate whether or not we have a good a good part of our life or a bad part of our life. Dentists, doctors, lawyers, police officers, franchise owners, whatever. But we are making it really hard on them unnecessarily. And that is one of the reasons why I refuse to be silenced anymore. I refuse to try to play nice in some of the spaces anymore. And I refuse to keep the secrets that I'm keeping because I'm trying to keep the peace, right? I'm not keeping the peace anymore. That is not helping. It's actually making stuff worse. And I become part of the problem again.
Well, that sure is a lot to say, and it's a lot of importance and value to it. And I think people need to be their own advocate first, right? Support themselves as much as they can, and then be the best advocate you can when you go into action, right? I mean, preparation. At the same time, I know everything is not the way an ideal world should be, right? You're always going to have politics. You're always going to have bureaucracy. You're always going to have self-interest. You're going to always have people who aren't flexible or changeable in any way, but you do the best you can, where you can, with who you can. And you hope the next day gets a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. Everything is currents. It's like the tide, and you just got to get your moments when you can. And, repetition hasn't changed anything. Actually, my kids went to high school right next to the Columbine High School. And when that happened, it was a shock to everybody that how can two 15-year-old kids go in and just have the mindset and the motivation to do what they did. And ever since then, it becomes an afterthought.
Yes.
Right. So more of it hasn't changed anything. It's just numbed everything. And really what it says in most cases, it's a lottery. Spin the wheel. It doesn't matter where the school is. Some of them have been in the highest levels of income. Some have been in the poorest. It doesn't matter. It's the mentality of really, when you get right down to it, in my opinion, is responsibility and accountability for each other, but also for ourselves and our families, right? If you take care of your family and make sure they're aware, if you make sure they're an advocate, right? And then join with others, the organizational power will outweigh even the numbers, right? Because without cohesiveness, without direction, everybody's tooting their own horn in their own way, and just means like it's all a mess in a sense. So, it's so easy to get disillusioned, disheartened, say, what's the use? It's like a drop in the ocean, and why would I waste my time? But that's where a burning desire, that's where having a different mentality that isn't always materialistic. It isn't always, how do I get ahead? And really, it's also been that mentality of musical chairs now with faster music and less chairs, right? So people are climbing over everybody to get their spot, while other people are sinking lower and lower. And the answer has got to be peer-to-peer. There's too many people right next to each other that can help each other, like Tabitha said, in the parking lot. And meanwhile, where are people rushing to get home? When they get home, they don't know what they're doing there anyways. They end up on TV or social media or doing something. So if you saw a person in trouble, wouldn't that be a highlight of your day that, hey, I took 10 minutes, picked somebody off the ground, dusted them off, sat with them on the bench to make sure they were okay, or made a phone call to get them help, versus, I'm going home so I can, eat some more food, enjoy my life more. Again, it's a distraction people live. It's not a reality. It's a way to get through. And too many people are just getting through. And that's not good enough. That should be the least position is, hey, I made it through the day. Well, didn't you add something to the day? Didn't you add somebody to something to somebody? Harvey, these conversations are getting deeper and richer. What's your thoughts now? It's pretty heartfelt.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been listening intently because it's given a really good take on the word today. And there's some really important issues being discussed. I think I mean, I've been reading through all of the comments that have been coming up there. Beverly said people fear taking responsibility because they're accountable. And that resonated with me a little bit. And it reminded me something that my dad used to say, actually. And when I was a little kid, if we were walking along the road and there was rubbish on the floor, like a tin can, if I kicked that tin can, he said that rubbish has now become yours. It's your responsibility. You've taken responsibility for it. In fact, here's a little bit of rubbish. I didn't feel necessarily a prop in the middle of this conversation was exactly what I should do, but it did make me think of that story, and it did make me think of the fact that we're all accountable and should be responsible for looking after other people. We don't know what people are going through as well. When we see people, it doesn't matter how they're acting or what they're doing. We don't know what sort of where they've been, how they've got to where they are the moment we saw them. And I think people are quick to judge rather than to help. And I think if you can just have the attitude of helping when you see someone, even if their response to you is negative. Someone said on this to ask the second question. And I think that's really important as well, because to listen, to really trying to understand what somebody has gone through, because people are going through some terrible things and they might not want to talk about it. They might not be ready to talk about it, but to give them the opportunity to be able to talk to you, or to give them a voice, and to let them share their experiences with other people. Petra said that one of her fantastic comments that she's adding today, adding huge value, and just be able to share stories with one another, with somebody who can relate to something that has happened. So I think it's having responsibility and taking actions. I always get takeaways from this. I've always been somebody who would stand up for somebody else, but I think today that's the takeaway everybody should have, to just, to take action if they see something that's not right. And every good person knows in their heart when something isn't right.
Yes.
If you look at something that goes on, and of the times that I've stepped up to try and help somebody, unfortunately, you do see a lot of people looking at their feet. Don't be that person looking at their feet and doing nothing. Be that person who stands up and takes action to help. And even if you get just this really negative response back, then understand that you don't know what that person's going through, and try and be empathetic to what they might need as well. You might reach out to somebody and they might not be ready, but just let them know that you're there when they are ready, and that there's an option if they need to talk to you, or reach out in a different way. So it's a balance, I think, to make sure people know that there are people there for them when they need them and where they need them, but to let them have the time they need to reach out when they need to, I think.
Yeah, well, access is everything. Empathy goes a long way. Little things over time make a big difference. It's not here's something, go get them, tiger. It's like, I'll be here tomorrow, I'll be here the next day. I mean, that's one good thing about having a show that's on so often, is you could move right from today into tomorrow and not lose much thought or momentum. And, who do you want to be with? What do you want to be doing with those people? And this could be a dream come true for a lot of people, because a lot of people are stuck with no purpose, no reason for being, even though they might have wealth that they never thought they'd have, access to things, access to people. But their true nature isn't just to be a taker and a user. There has to be some reason that you're part of humanity or you're not. and you're not human in the best way possible you can be. And the other thing I want to emphasize, you got to meet people where they're at, not where you'd like them to be or where you're at, right? Sometimes if someone's down, you got to kneel, to meet them and talk to them face to face. You can't just say, come on, get up, here's something for you. If it was that easy, they would have figured that out or done it already. I don't think people go out of their way to figure out how bad of a situation can I get into. But usually fear and all that stuff starts to compound, and you think, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve anything. And you get into acceptance. That's my fate. That's how it was meant to be, or luck of the draw. However it is, most people aren't always where you're at. And I think that whole phrase of being the better person when you can, right? Sometimes you got to, like Harvey says, if someone gives you a hard time, you got to take it with a grain of salt, and I think the other element, you got to figure, what is your biggest risk? What are you afraid of? If you saw an old person fall down, what would be the challenge for just giving them a hand up? Are you going to catch something? Are you going to all of a sudden be in danger? So many people can't even stand up. What are they going to do to you? Why would they want to? Why would they want to create that? If anything, it's you providing that allows them to help themselves more than anything else. So, Petra, like I say, has been, Ashif is here. Ashif shows up quite a bit from Toronto. Be accountable and be countable. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to count for something. How much to you is a compliment worth every day relative to how many people sincerely compliment you, right? What is it when someone says, boy, that's a beautiful outfit you have on, right? And hardly anybody ever says that. So that's special. Boy, I like your new hairdo, or I just like the style that you share the way you are with people. And you know what happens? What's good for you is good for people like you. Right? And what gets you excited, why not be the one who says, I honestly, ever since I was in retail and I never had any money, I was always bootstrapping. I had to rely on the intangibles, not the money, not the inventory. It was the service. It was like, boy, that's a beautiful truck you got out there. And I knew how much a person must enjoy that truck because of what they did to it or what they put into it or how shiny it is. And once you make a friend, then it's much easier to make a sale. But if nothing else, you made a friend. Yeah. How many friends can you account for every day?
Don, I was just sorry to interrupt there, but it was something that Petra said there that I thought was really good. She's talking about my ex-friend's father had broken his hips and had dementia, and he was going to go into a nursing home, but she helped him regain his independence in his own home that he built. I think that's such a wonderful thing. And I think what's really wonderful about that is the word independence as well, or strength or courage. Like you said, Don, not everybody is in the position that we're in when we're talking to somebody, but to help someone regain that, whatever that means to them, is a wonderful thing to do. So that's amazing.
Well, I think congratulations to that, or good job to that, because I'm kind of dealing with some of the same situation, not ex-friends. These are like real family. But the thing about it is that one of the things that I ask is, what do you want the rest of your life to look like? And when I ask the question, they're like stunned. What do you mean? Oh, I'm asking you, what do you want the last 5 to 10 years of your life to look like? So I can help carve that out for you. I'm not trying to take away your independence. I'm not trying to make all the decisions for you. What I'm trying to do is give you a very good rest of your life, right? Because you're no longer able to work. We're all spread out and going in other directions. And the fact that she was able to turn around and say, I'm going to help him and I'm going to work and get him so he can be okay in his home. I appreciate that, because I too wanted that for my family as well. but it still comes down to the fact that we have to ask some of these questions. Being an advocate means you have to ask, what do they want, so that you can help facilitate their desired outcome. And she was able to do that because apparently he was like, I mean, being in his own home is a safer and a more productive way for him to live out the rest of his years, instead of being somewhere that's different or strange to him, which will help to expedite his dementia into Alzheimer's, will ultimately result into an early death, right? So I applaud her for that. I really want to meet this powerful woman. But I also wanted to comment on the fact that what she said, she took her pain and turned it into purpose and power for others. That is the reason why the mother of all inventions start with somebody trying to solve a problem for themselves and learn that other people are in the same boat. Okay. So that's the same for how I started my business as well, right? Because at the end of the day, it impacted us, but I didn't wait for it to come to me before I made a change. It just so happened I was part of the equation. And being part of the equation means that somebody's saying, here is the solution. You have a solution to this problem. So now go and solve that problem. Now, what I'm met with is something totally different. But that advocacy started not just because it happened directly to my family. And Petra, she's like, I don't want to see families have to live the rest of their lives in tears and their lives broken. And I wanted to make sure I commented on that, because that is the reason why I fight so hard for children. And that's because schools have the kids for a short period of time. When you're in elementary school, you got them for 4 to 5 years, and in each of the grade levels thereafter, right? Parents is a lifetime. So when you lose a child dies or something like that, you have a bunch of other children that'll fall into place that will distract you from recognizing that that child is gone, right? But the parents do not have replacement children, do not have somebody else that will step in, and do not have an opportunity to be truly distracted, because there is a very large void that has been left when a child dies or when they have some type of tragedy happen to them. And I think that when we start taking a look at that in education and in advocacy, we can start being more respectful to how we engage and respond to the bad behaviors of yours who are saying your child doesn't count enough because I'm going to forget him next year because I got 70 other kids to manage.
Well, and I think, obviously we've touched on something that's universal, that's been around forever, that will be around forever. The whole focus is to what extent, to what response, and you look around and there's needs everywhere. I think there needs to be also focus. What can one do most effectively? What can one commit to most strenuously in order to feel like you're doing something? And I think if there's some small reward to people who lose something or somebody, is maybe they help prevent somebody else from dealing with the same situation. Maybe because of their loss, it's just like people who donate organs, right? It takes a brave person to give up something to save somebody. And in typical cases, the person giving ends up with the most challenge in the situation, not the person receiving. But why do people do that? Because they know they're passing the baton. It might be through helping somebody live longer or live better, but now they've achieved something that only they could have done, and most people don't. And there's a premium satisfaction to looking and seeing your legacy still live and live better, right? If you gave your organ to some kid and all of a sudden they grew up big and strong, I mean, there's a life you saved, but also a life you created. And to your point, as far as asking people what they want, people are still people, whether a year old or 100 years old, right? And they all have needs, they all have feelings, they all have interests, and they all used to be somebody, especially the older people. People that had accomplished a lot, who had done a lot to be respected, and nothing's changed except they've been forgotten, right? Their situation has changed, but that doesn't make them any less valuable or important or deserving, right? And I think in older cultures, there was reverence for the aged.
Yes.
There was special place for them. No one put them off into a home. I mean, because what it says is we'll keep you safe, but we don't want nothing to do with you. We'll make sure you got a roof, you got clothes, you got food, but you're taking the person out of the personality, and I think that's an abuse in itself. So, we've hit an hour. It goes so quickly. This subject and this audience just drives everything so fast that all we can do is respond. But, I can see where we started with the word advocate to where we finished, and how much richness and stories and personal situations that no one would have known without this conversation. And you can't help but learn from what everybody else has shared, because it was real. It was genuine. It wasn't a philosophy, a strategy, a vision of what may be. It's today, right now, right where we're at. And the question is, how do we get better for this hour together? And if everybody can help a little bit more, be more aware, be more sensitive, and also see something that you typically weren't seeing, like that little kid huddled with nothing to eat, or that old person sitting by themselves on a bench feeling bad. So anyways, we can go forever. Final thoughts. Tabitha, first time, what's your thoughts after an hour of this show and what you just experienced?
This is pretty good. I knew I was gravitating to you for a reason. I like what you do in this hour of empowerment. So I did enjoy myself here. I'm glad that I got a chance to meet some people and express my viewpoints on advocacy, because I think it's all of our responsibilities. It's just up to us to make a decision on how we're going to respond to that.
Well, great in every way. So proud and honored to have you, Tabitha. Harvey, I mean, this is just hard to put a.
It is. I mean, I couldn't agree more with what Tabitha's just said, and I think to have one final prop, actually, which is just a simple one, which is my phone, because I think it represents how you can be an advocate, it's much easier in a way to be an advocate for many more people across the world, in fact, with platforms like this. But even your friends, even your neighbors, they're in your contacts, and you can phone them and you can text them and they can text you. So there's plenty of ways of supporting one another and becoming an advocate. And thanks to great technologies, we've got even better ways. So if anyone needs any of my support or help, please reach out, please connect, and I'll continue to do all I can.
Well, thank you. And this makes my day so much better because of the relevancy, the value, the reality of it, that makes you feel like you want to be part of the now.
Right.
You don't want to drag a legacy forward or take fear in the future into today. It's really being constructive, productive, and satisfied, and it's nice to rest your head at the end of the day on your pillow and say, I left the log pile bigger than I found it, and tomorrow I'm going to add to it. So with that, everybody have a lovely day. Tomorrow, come back. It'll be Kelly, and everybody knows Kelly. I want to thank Tabitha one more time and Harvey, and wish everybody a blessed day. And go out and help somebody just for practice. Go look for somebody that you might be able to help. And it could be, just a kind word, just a smile as you pass somebody goes a long way, because that might trip them into a redirection or a new thought process that they weren't into. You never know what you don't know. With that said, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.